So today it is a Banku fried fish and hot pepper kind of day in Nanabe's kitchen. Join me, let's cook this together. I am going to be using my dry Banku mix to make the Banku. And that is why I'm presenting this video to you today, because I've been meaning to share the recipe with you for months. I actually put the recipe together last year in August. Don't ask me why I'm bringing it now. Long story, but hey, great news. We're going to learn together today. So I have my Banku mix, added some water to it to get the right consistency before it goes onto the stove. Season with some salt, stir it together. Feel it with your hands to know that you have reached the perfect consistency. It has to be almost a quadruple heavy cream consistency. The Banku mix was previously prepared with yellow and white cornmeal plus some fresh cassava. In this video, I will be sharing with you how I make my quick and easy Banku mix. We will make the dough first and let it ferment, and then we'll turn it into a powder. What I love about this recipe is that it lasts really long at room temperature. You can just keep it in a pantry or any dry space, and it will stay there and stay fresh for months, possibly even years. And when you cook it, it tastes just like Banku. So let's begin. First, let's wash our hands as usual. For the list of ingredients, we're going to be needing 2 parts of cornmeal, which is a combination of white cornmeal and yellow cornmeal, to 1 part of cassava. This has been thawed and it came from a bag like this. So it was frozen when I bought it. It's really easy to use. And this comes to 5 pounds of frozen cassava that's been thawed. So we're going to need 10 pounds total of the white and yellow combination of cornmeal. And the cornmeal combination is half and half of the yellow and the white, by the way. So first we rinse the cassava that has thawed and remove the woody inner core. Then we split them up into very small pieces and blend them up into a very smooth consistency. So this recipe is very convenient for those of us who don't have a lot of freezer space, because the original Banku mix is typically wet. So in order to keep it nice and fresh and prevent it from continuing to ferment, you would want to keep it frozen or refrigerated until use. So this recipe actually came together during my final year in university. My roommate at the time, Aseye Naza, and I would go to Kumasi Kejetiap Market and purchase all the necessary ingredients needed to put this Banku mix together. So we would get the actual corn kernels and also some cassava, peel the cassava, wash them up, and take everything to the mill and get it to be ground into a powdery flour consistency. And then we'll add some water to it and then mix it up to form a dough, allow it to ferment over 4 to 5 days, and then we'll turn it into a powder form. So you have to keep watching the video to learn how we do that. And it will last us for months throughout the semester. And sometimes we had some left over that we'll take home with us when the semester was over. So good times, good times. So far we've blended our cassava, rinsed the blender with some more water because we need the water anyway. We've added the yellow and white cornmeal to the cassava, and now we're mixing it up just like Aseye and I did back then. And now what we're doing is making sure that we're mixing it up until it is completely combined. So you want the dough to be wet enough to where you can take a fist or a couple of fistful of the dough and ball it up just like that, and it will not crumble. Okay, that is the consistency you want. So you'd need to eyeball the amount of water you would need to add to it until you get that consistency, and then transfer it into your fermentation container, in which case this is a plastic container with a lid. All right, now when you're transferring, you want to pack the dough. So don't just fill the container with the dough, you want to pack it. So you are going to compress it with your hand, just as I am doing here. The reason being that you do not want air pockets in between, because growth can start forming, and you do not want fungus growing in between the dough. Nobody needs that. Then you also want to smoothen the surface of it, and to prevent more growth from happening, you would want to cover the dough directly with the cling film. Now, 3 years ago, when Ga-Adangbe's Kitchen began on YouTube, I did share my very first Banku mix recipe with you using the actual corn kernels, just like we did back in Ghana. And I did cover it with a cling film, and it really helps. That's what Aseye and I also did back then. It helps to prevent fungus from growing on the surface of your dough. Also, if you want your Banku to have a stronger fermentation quality to it, then you can ferment it for 10 days. All right, now look at that. Now it's 5 days later, and it's perfectly fermented for me, to my taste. I love it, and the dough is nice and smooth. It was so nice to feel in between my fingers that way. Oh, it's just perfection. It has that sweet, pungent aroma and character of fermentation. Just enough of it though over the 5-day period. Of course, like I said, if you want more, take it over the top, then 10 days will do. Next step is drying the dough so that we can form the dry mix. So I transfer it into a larger bowl and use the free and natural dry summer heat outside to dry my dough up. Here in Arizona where I live, our summers can be likened to blow dryer heat. It is an inferno out here in the summer months, but it is very useful because I use it a lot to preserve a lot of my food that can be sun dried. So when the summer comes, I am, halfway happy. So what I'm doing right now is also storing some of the dough in the freezer, just because I could use opportunity to show that it can be stored in the freezer as typically done. And I have just wrapped it in some cling film. Then I compress and compact it to form a shape that I can stack in the fridge. So I want them to be stackable. So I turn them into sort of a square or rectangular shape flat on the surface so I can stack them, just to maximize the space in my freezer. I also date and label it. I also rewrap it to contain the Sharpie ink and prevent it from rubbing onto other items in the freezer or the freezer itself. Done. Nice and stackable, not rubbing at all because it's been rewrapped. Into the freezer they go. The rest of the dough that I have spread out into the bigger bowl now goes outside and air dries in the summer heat for about 3 hours. And when it comes back, it should be crumbly, not all the way dry, depending on how hot it is outside for you. Now, I also had the fan turned on in my patio, so that also helps to keep the flies away and also helps it to dry faster. So what I'm doing currently is just crumbling it up to get it closer to the powdery consistency I'd like it to be. Now, I like to attend to the dough when it is partially dry like this and break them up and loosen it up to air dry faster, because it's a lot easier when it is partially dry. If you leave it to a bone dry state, then it will be very hard. They'll become like rocks, be harder to break them up manually, okay? So now that I have done that, I'm going to sift it. And any crumbles I wasn't able to manually break goes into the blender. And that way I'll be able to break it up, sift it again, and take it outside until it is completely dry and free of any form of moisture. So this method of making your banku mix, your dry banku mix, is absolutely convenient for people who do not have a lot of freezer space or don't have electricity, or are college students. You can travel with this for as long as you need it. It will stay at room temperature without going bad. All right. And when we were in college, we didn't have a lot of freezer space, but we ate a lot of banku. So we needed something like this to sustain us. And it was so perfect to have. I enjoyed my banku with no worries, and it was just beautiful. So now I'm spreading it back out, and I'm going to set it back outside. Now it's nice and dry and smooth and perfect. And I'm making sure I'm spreading it out so we have a thin layer throughout, and then set it back outside in the patio with the fan on to keep the flies away. And hey, I just leave it there until it is completely dry. We bring it back in, and it is perfect. Perfect in that it is bone dry, just as it ought to be. Now I'm going to do another round of sifting. It is completely unnecessary, but that is just me. I really wanted it to be really smooth for also presentation purposes. So I rub it up a few times because there were still some crumbly bits in there that needed to be broken up. Like I said, it is unnecessary because when you add your water to it to make your banku, that will completely dissolve. But for presentation purposes and me being a naba, I had to sift it again, but you don't have to. Our banku mix is done. We're going to now store it in a recycled plastic container with a lid, and I just leave it on a shelf and use it when I need to make banku. See those? I'm just gonna break them up. And here is our banku mix. How gorgeous is this? Friends, you know how you are used to doing a certain thing a certain way for the longest time because it works for you, it never fails you, but somehow you ditch that way of doing it and do it another way, which also works, but then you find out later that, hey, you better go back to that old way because it just so happens to be a better way considering the current situation. In which case, I just happen to lack freezer space, so it is perfect and convenient for me. So back to making the banku. I have added 3 cups of the dry banku mix to some water until I got a quadruple thickness of heavy cream. Added some salt to it, mixed it together, set it on low medium heat, stirred it together consistently, not walking away from it until a dough forms. All right, and then we steam it up with some hot water for about 20 minutes until thoroughly cooked. We served it today with some fried fish and hot pepper and some vegetables also on the side, some onions, serrano chili sliced thinly, as well as some tomatoes. And then I drizzled onto my vegetable medley my spicy barbecue vinegar sauce, which just brings everything together and helps to also bring the heats down a little bit in my hot pepper. And just look at how soft this banku is. It was so delicious. Friends, I hope you have learned a thing or two and are inspired to try this beautiful kitchen hack. Thank you all so much for watching and for subscribing. We have hit 400,000 subscribers and continuing to grow. Friends, can you believe it? 400,000 subscribers? I can't believe it. And I owe you all the thanks. God bless you all. Thank you, beautiful person, for watching the video all the way to the end. Kindly leave me a comment and subscribe down below, and don't forget to share the video as well. Also, watch more videos. It is chop time, and here in Anaba's kitchen, chop time is always yes, friends. So pull up a chair. We are all friends and family here.